Um, hey, Josh. So we are now live on YouTube. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I know the last time you came, it didn't quite work out. So I
I was
was.
all set up. I was set up in a janitor's closet, ready to go, just waiting
Were you?
there. And then, yeah, I was. I'm not kidding you. I took two buckets. I was in this random like commercial building because we were just closing at title, and this it was a whole debacle of title. I ran over, realized I got to my car, had no time, went back in the building, went into the janitor's closet to find the only space of like quiet, propped up two um, like 3 or 5 gallon buckets of paint right next to each other, and then put a little board and then put my phone there. And then I was sitting on this box just waiting to go live with you guys with this awesome, crazy story. Um, so
And then
I think
Caroline, it's okay, Josh. We'll do it another day.
I know, I know. I was actually kind of excited to continue then because I think it would have been a good story. And of course, that was a month ago, and now I'm just like, there's other stories to tell now. It's
Oh,
that's
totally.
how quick it goes in our industry. So
So that was the week before I went. Oh, that was the night before I was headed to Havasupai Falls. I actually have a knee injury from it. I have an appointment, so crossing my fingers I don't need surgery, but I think I may. Anywho, but we're so excited to have you here. First of all, for anybody who's on here on YouTube and watching me eat my gummy mots or whatever these are, I needed something. Um, we have Josh. Do you go by Joshua?
Josh is fine. Yeah, Josh Meyer.
I don't mind the proper Joshua.
That was like my professional name. I went through a couple phases. I'm like, what do I do? Like, do I change my name? I have two middle names, Liam Brennan. I went by Liam for a while. Then somebody called me LB. I thought that might be cool, but Josh Meyer is standard,
All
and
right.
we'll stick with it. So
Right on. So I first saw you on Pace's podcast. I was really inspired by your story because it's like, it really is inspiring. It tells the everyday person that, look, if Joshua Liam Meyer can do it, then you can do it too. So I felt like it was important for you to be able to come here, tell your story. And then what's exciting, because I don't remember you covering this, but I did see that when you were posting on what you would talk about is how you can help integrate other people into your business so that they can get started too, which is amazing. So I'm really excited about that. So Joshua, let's talk about your background. How'd you get started? Like, what's happening? How are you now another creative guru out in the universe?
yeah, well, I appreciate it. So, if you guys want to hear my little bit more intimate background, go listen to me on Pace. But I do come from a single parent household, just my mom, and she dealt with some issues throughout my whole life and still does. And um, all my friends, like 99.7% of the kids that graduate from my high school go to college. Right, I was like one of three that literally just didn't because I couldn't afford it. So I joined the Navy, and joining the Navy was the best decision I ever made because you have the VA home loan, which for anyone that has an opportunity to use that, and I tell everyone I can that does, get out, buy a fourplex, live in the fourplex, rent the other three units, and you're going to be set for life, even with that one purchase. And I truly believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what it is I went down. So my story is different than that, though. I bought a single family with a buddy of mine that we grew up together, and he didn't pay rent the first 2 months. I had known this guy since I was like 9 years old, and would have never guessed. I mean, we were like really, really good friends. Would have never guessed that that would even happen. And more long story short, I had to kick him out. I ended up renting the other two rooms for 500 and 500, and my mortgage was only $470 a month because I had the benefit of living in Dayton, Ohio at the time, where you could buy a single family home for like $60,000.
Nice.
So yeah, so I'm here. I am cash flowing on accident in this single family home that I thought was going to be my forever. And what I did is I decided, hey, I don't want to be in Dayton anymore. I want to be with my now wife in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
Rented the basement where I was living fully finished. for 600. So now I'm making $1,100 a month in cash flow. These guys are paying all the bills on the single family home, and I'm in Milwaukee, which I was a bigger pockets guy for a while. And Brandon Turner, Brandon Turner, I think, yeah, I should know that. I've listened to him a million times, but Beardy Brandon, he even had a chapter in one of his books talking about how great Milwaukee is for, owning real estate properties, because
Right.
you could buy a fourplex for $120,000 that'll rent for $4,000 a month before COVID. So
Right.
your cash flow, I mean, you're talking about like, $375 a month per door in cash flow after all utilities are paid. We bought a couple of those, and then I slid into creative sort of on accident. I'm one of those people that like loves real estate. Like I love staying up at night, like just going on the MLS back then and just calculating every deal I could find and seeing if I can make it work.
Money math. It's my favorite.
Exactly. I love it. My calculators are like my top apps that I use on my phone. But there's this lady, she probably was not much older than I am now. She's maybe 31, 33, something. And with her husband, they were selling off their portfolios, 136 total buildings, like 250 units. And they were asking $8 million for it, I want to say. And I didn't have $8 million, but I had just learned through watching some other people about the creative finance. And I wrote up an LOI, letter of intent, to buy it on seller finance, and was asking 0% down. And they actually came back to me at 3% for the whole portfolio.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? Like, I know it was still pretty high, but in hindsight, I never even guessed that they would entertain to give up a whole portfolio on seller finance.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I didn't have 3% down back then of $8 million, but long story short, I learned that it was a possibility, because a lot of people say like, oh, seller finance is a waste of time. Like, people aren't going to go for it. Well, you'd be surprised. Some people will.
Yep.
So we ended up getting into a 6-unit building from a seller from Chicago that just got himself into this headache of a property and just didn't have the time to fix it up. So I convinced him to do a 0% down seller finance on a 5-year balloon, and COVID hit not long after that, and the property values went up on it and refinanced out, and that's how I first got into creative, and then I've done sub twos and all kinds of stuff since then. So
fantastic. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, but I'm a firm believer. I love creative finance. Love it. I think it's great. I think a lot of people, they get in Pace's Facebook group, the roughly 100,000 person group. They're like, I want to quit my W-2. When can I do that? How soon can I do it? And my advice to a lot of these people is to keep your W-2. Go and use an FHA loan. Go find a fourplex. Sacrifice a little bit. Go live in whatever 1-2 bedroom unit you have. Take your kids if you have to, and sacrifice a year to get your first cash flowing rental property. And you're going to learn right then and there. First of all, the barrier to entry isn't that high. You can find a decent deal on the MLS potentially. If you hate it, then it's only one property you have to worry about, and you're not quitting your W-2, and you can just kind of keep living your life. If you love it, you can learn how to scale from there. So that's my advice to everybody. Like it doesn't have to be a home run the first deal. It doesn't have to be a big apartment complex. It doesn't have to be a sub-2 on a property that's worth $2 million. It could be a fourplex that's worth $250K that you live in for a year.
Yeah. And I would say, and Caroline and I have been pretty consistent about this, like when you're doing outreach to sellers or agents, always underwrite it first as a cash deal, especially if you're in that season of just getting started and you need to put money in the bank so that you can invest into other things like creating systems in a business. And I think the number one thing, in my opinion, is investing in yourself. It's why we thank you all for coming to the podcast, being here and listening, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're investing in yourself first, so you understand, what are some ways for you to be able to exit out of certain types of deals, or understand how this business runs so that you can become a better business owner at the end. So absolutely. So Joshua, so like when you first started getting these deals, because first of all, that 3% on 8 million, did you wholesale that? Did you wholesale the opportunity?
I didn't
No.
see. The thing is, I didn't really know too much about that type of real estate at the time.
Ah, you didn't know you could wholesale that.
I,
Because I
you
mean
know, I
that's a
didn't.
sweet deal. Mm-hmm.
It was. I'd say at the time it was probably I probably could have, but it was also pre-COVID, so a couple of years pre-COVID. So that portfolio now is probably worth $21 million easily.
100%, no doubt.
So, but I didn't really get into wholesaling and flipping until about 2 years ago.
Oh,
So, yeah, I was strictly buy and hold. In fact, we got to over. I think we were up to 24 units before I ever really even tried to get into anything too creative or wholesale or flipping, which
yeah,
is part of the reason why my advice to a lot of newbies is sometimes you just got to take the slower road,
yeah.
the more
The
traditional
marathon.
route.
Yep.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Something I wanted to mention, you may see that you're not, it's only me and Joshua right now. So our fearless co-host, Caroline Cain, um, she is actually at a close, or she's trying to close a deal right now. She's at an acquisition, if you will. She went to go get a contract signed. So everybody wish her good juju. Send her comments on her Instagram if you like. Hopefully you got that contract. Hopefully you're able to help that seller. It sounds a little bit like a sticky situation. We were texting a little bit, so I'm sending all the good vibes to Caroline right now that she's able to help that seller. But yeah, so you have Joshua and me, and today is Joshua's birthday, which is why we have the little cube there. I saw your wife took you on a helicopter ride. So this is crazy. I didn't hear anything about helicopters. And then other than, Grant Cardone always talks about helicopters. Um, I went on my first helicopter ride when we were at Havasupai Falls on our way out. And ever since then, I've known at least 3 or 4 people that recently went on a helicopter ride. It's weird. The universe is weird. So,
it is. It's kind of like when you buy a car and you see it everywhere, right?
yeah, for sure.
So,
Uh-huh.
me and my wife were talking about that because she wants a G wagon. So, and she's like,
Hmm.
"Oh, they're so unique. There's hardly any here." And now we see one almost every day in Milwaukee, and we're like,
Totally. In
maybe we
Milwaukee,
don't.
even. Okay.
Yeah,
No, I'm
yeah.
kidding. I'm talking
No,
Milwaukee.
it's definitely a blue collar city. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no doubt. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we were in Phoenix, and we were kind of amazed with just how many nice cars there were everywhere. Because, if you drive, I mean, even a G wagon in Milwaukee, like you're turning heads everywhere you go. So,
Yeah.
and
Do you do any deals with Marlon, by the way?
I don't know.
Okay. So Marlon Johnson is one of my partners and friends who I do rent a house to, by the way, but we had expectations set up front. I saw somebody say, don't ever rent to your friends or family. I'm like, no, don't ever rent your friends or your family without having upfront contract and having a contract that says this is exactly what expected, and then follow that. Know that it could be at the cost of your family or friends if you're renting it to them. But anyway, so yeah, he does a lot. I think he's up to in the late 20s of units out in Milwaukee. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should tap into some Milwaukee action so that I could collect some units and focus on cash flow. What do you think?
I mean, we're at 36 right now. I'm actually getting out. So I'm
Oh,
getting
you're
out.
going out
I'm
of
getting out
Milwaukee?
of the city. I'm going into the suburbs. COVID killed Milwaukee, and they're coming hard at the landlords.
Oh, they're not landlord friendly.
Not at all. Not at all.
Oh,
I've actually, it's sad. So we've been investing here for years now. Never really had a problem, and now it seems like I'm getting like some sort of bill from the Department of Neighborhood Services every day, like literally at least once a week. And I'm like, what can I do? Like I have the best property management company in Milwaukee. I'm on top of them every day. I have a relationship with some people in the city, and yet they're still coming after me. And I went and we were actually going to wholesale a deal in the north side, and I was talking to this guy. He's been in Milwaukee for 16 years. He only has 10 properties remaining. He said he never had a problem all 16 years. He goes, now it's the same problem I'm having. The Department of Neighborhood Services are sending bills left and right. I think they spent so much money during COVID that they're trying to recoup any way they can. That's just my opinion.
yeah.
And then the judges here are pretty horrible. For example, this same guy, the reason he was trying to sell it, is because he's been trying to evict this lady for 3 years. And the judge has delayed since February the eviction. And the judge even told him in person, and he's like a blue collar guy. I mean, blue collar through and through. He's a minority, like not just like, your typical vanilla, like wearing suit, like he's a blue collar guy. And the judge told him, she said, you make enough money, you can afford to let her live there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Milwaukee for you. So I'm getting out. I'm going straight to the suburbs where it's going to be significantly a less headache for us. I'd say once we hit 30 plus doors is when everything started to kind of unravel a little bit. But it also kind of coincides with COVID and everything else too. So
there's external factors that are impacting your portfolio, albeit you're not a slumlord, you're taking care of your tenants, you're keeping things systematized. Are you systematized?
Oh yeah. So we and not to mention, like I said, I'm using the biggest and one of the best, if not the best, property management company in Milwaukee. And if you call down and say Josh Meyer's name, they know who it is because I stay on them. Like I'm there. It's about a 40-minute drive from where I live, and I'm there at least once every couple of weeks, just saying, hey, what's going on with this one? And not to mention, I do something that I think is unique. I give my number to all the tenants. I'll go to the properties and I'll actually introduce myself as the owner. A lot of advice I read over the years is like, hey, we don't really want the tenants to know who you are. I'm the opposite. I want them to be able to feel comfortable to call me, because if the property management company isn't getting done what they're asking of them, I want to know that.
Yeah.
So,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I see Josh's thing. Systems in place. I mean, like, it's I don't really know. Like, we use spreadsheets for everything. We have PDFs with everything. We have all of our contractors. In fact, my wife's cousin owns a company, so we do all of our own unit turns. So I don't let the property management do those typically. I will go every 3 months. I try to do an inspection on the properties at least every 3 months. It's kind of like it's turned into once a year as I've gotten more and more properties. But we have incentives set up. Like, for example, we'll take 10% off of rent if the property fits a certain condition, things like that. So I think a lot of investors, and I'm even guilty of this as I've kind of gotten more and more properties, is they go so hands off that they don't even know what's going on in their units. And that's when things start to kind of fall off the rails. The best real estate investors, in my opinion, with buy and hold properties, they're self-managing and they're very aware of everything that's going on. They know how much the light bills are. They know what the water is each month. They could, if you said, hey, well, what's the water bill for this property? Like, if they don't know it off the top of their head, they can go and find it pretty quickly. So I try to. Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because as business owners, right? If you read the book, The E-Myth, or if you take any focus around business development, a lot of them talk about, like, what is your time worth, and understanding like systems. Like, so I love that Josh did ask those questions. By the way, I'm going to ask these questions, but I literally self-manage all my properties except one. So, and I don't want to, though. So, not that I want to be hands off, because, I'm going to go take my horse into the sunset, but because every advice you get is stop working in your business, start working on your business, because that's how you scale. That, like, it might be a reason you're still at 36, right? Maybe you would be at 50. Like, 36 is amazing, by the way. I'm not talking shit. I'm just saying, like,
I actually stopped. I stopped scaling when I went to management, because I went from having no problems. I went to management, and within 2 years of being in management, my whole portfolio was way worse than it had ever been, because of the property management companies we manage, and we own mostly in C+ neighborhoods, Hispanic neighborhoods. My wife's Hispanic, so we went from having all Hispanic tenants in Hispanic neighborhoods to having all subsidized tenants in Hispanic neighborhoods that weren't Hispanic anymore. So all because the property management company thought it was easier in those specific areas to put subsidized housing in our units. So we went from having like blue collar, hardworking Hispanic people in the Hispanic neighborhood to people that were living off subsidized housing, which is nothing wrong with it. But we saw pretty quickly that a lot of our good tenants that had been there for years, they left because of the new neighbors. So
Got it.
we had to go back in and kind of like, we're trying to go back in and fix everything. In fact, what I've done is I've taken back part of the management. I'm doing the leasing portion, and they're doing the rent collection and emergency maintenance portion. So that
Okay.
way I have a little bit more control on who I put in the property, but once they're in the property, the management kind of handles the rest.
Awesome.
So,
Okay. That's good to know. We actually have a good friend of the podcast, Stephen Hunt. He's somebody I've connected with on different projects. We've partnered up on different projects. And they actually just started a management company out here in Arizona called Habu, highest and best use management, which I love because they tell you whether or not you should be using it for short-term rental, a midterm rental, like how are you going to maximize your rents. If you guys want that information, definitely let me know in the comments, and we'll get that info from Steven. But I love that you're giving us like this is exactly what happens, right? Like we all have the dream of passive income, and then you realize owning property is not passive. It's very active. You have to be aware of who you're renting to. Like, are you following fair housing laws? Are you giving folks like actually there was a specific or regulation out here in Phoenix that you have to review subsidized tenants regardless. Like there was some sort of something that was I haven't had to do any turnover of my tenants yet, so I haven't caught up on that ordinance. So is there something like that in Milwaukee as well? Like you have to give uh, subsidized tenants an opportunity, and by subsidized, we're talking about like Section 8, right?
well, we have Section 8. We also use the kind of adult rehabilitation or sober living has become.
Oh, okay.
It's I guess it's basically the same thing. It's a company through Guest House. There are 16 of our units are through them, and they've been great. But it's also sober living, so you're going to have your issues there as well. If whenever people relapse or whatever happens with that, we never had. I mean, obviously we have like non-discrimination laws this, that, and the next, but we never had to like give Section 8 or subsidized housing like first right of refusal or anything like that. Maybe I was wrong on not doing it, but whether or not it's an actual law, I'm not sure. But I can definitely find out. But we never. If it was, then then I'm sorry, Milwaukee. So because most of the time we were just kind of going to family, like friends.
Well, if you have property managers, though, they're responsible for making sure that you're following those regulations. So I wouldn't be too worried, Joshua.
No.
So let's switch gears a little, because part of what I'm excited for is what you offer to the normal person who wants to get their feet wet into real estate investing. And by the way, I did not forget, on this notepad is the name of the winners. And I'm going to say winners because I chose two. I was only going to choose one. But it's Joshua's birthday, and I felt I should get two people to win 1 hour consulting sessions with me and a $10 Starbucks card for getting me or helping me get to 5,000 followers on Instagram. I really, really, really appreciate everybody who was able to do that. If you're not following me on Instagram, obviously you can see my name right here. If you're not following Joshua, go follow him too, Meyer_REI. So I have two names, not just one. We have two names that I did a little drawing for. So we're going to talk a little bit to Joshua on how he helps the everyday wannabe real estate investor to get started. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my company, for a while, we were actually bringing people in to, they could work any hours. If they want to do 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, whatever it was, go for it. And what we would do is we'd have meetings and we'd kind of teach them, hey, like this is what you need to do. Like this is how you talk to sellers. This is sort of what your approach needs to be, right? Because if I had to restart tomorrow, what I would do is I would immediately get a batch dialer. right? I get batch dialer. I would probably pull like 500 to 1,000 leads.
What's a batch dialer, Josh?
Batch
I don't know what that is.
So batch dialer is a power dialer, or it allows you to essentially put in phone numbers, right? You put in skip trace numbers where it'll pop up with the address, comps on the address, which is cool in their case with like Zillow, this, that, and the next. And it'll allow you to just call, right? So you can do a single line, two, all the way up to 10 at once, where you can call 10 people at once, and you'll see them all ringing. And then when somebody answers, it'll automatically put you to talking to them. And the reason for a power dialer is that the goal is to talk to as many people as you can. So you can sit here.
What's your typical goal? So if you have an 8-hour day, you're like, I'm going to go get this power dialer thing that Josh told me to go get. What is it? What is it?
How many people do we want to talk to in a day, or like how many deals do you want to get? That's a good question. So we don't have too many people working 8 hours a day right now. So the data, I wouldn't even have that data, because we have people like all over the board with the amount of hours that they're working.
Yeah.
I will say that we can make anywhere from like 300 to 600 calls an hour on that day.
300 to 600 calls an hour.
An hour.
Okay. So you're making 300 to 600 calls an hour because of the power dialer.
Mm-hmm.
And then how many contacts are you making, and how do you define a contact?
Yeah. So I think we're at like a 18% connect rate or something like that. Matt, okay, look, now it's time to shout out the other people on my team. So right now there are two co-owners, there are three owners in the company, myself, Mohammed, and Matt. Matt's sort of the technical guy. So this kind of brings me to a point that I was thinking. So Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, I saw something that he posted not long ago where he said, if you want to be successful, you have to go and find partners that are good at what you're deficient at. I am not a technology guy. If you listen to me and Pace's podcast, you'll know that I didn't have my first computer until I was 19. I didn't have internet until I was 19. I didn't have a car until I was 19. We didn't have cable. We literally had none of that. So as far as the software goes, I am definitely not the guy. But Matt he's a techie, so it works out. Where I'm deficient, he's really good. He would have the answer to those questions. That being said, I can pull up the information right here. We are using a CRM that goes directly. If we have a lead, right? So if one of our VAs is on the power dialer and they have a lead, they'll kick it over to our CRM. Right now we have 790 leads just in the last week.
Just in the last week, you were able to grab 790
leads.
Okay. And then how would you define a lead? The reason I'm asking you to pause and define some of these things, because we do have some folks who are new to real estate and they're like, hey, I got a deal I want to talk to you about. And
Absolutely.
It's barely even a suspect. Okay. So I like to say suspect, lead, contract, and then maybe it's a deal. Because just because you get something under contract does not mean it's a deal.
So check this out. So we go from a lead for us would be a suspect.
Okay.
So we go from blank data to lead to no contact made. So if it's in, so let me go back. We go from blank data to new leads to no contact made or contact made, appointment set, ready for contract, offers made, under contract. That's our pipeline.
Totally. That makes sense. Yeah, that's the progression.
Yep. And then when I say a new lead, it could be it's somebody that we know who they are, somebody that's verbally interested, somebody that's called us back in our system. So those are the three, pretty much the three pillars that we're using for a new lead, right? So essentially trying to just, we made like 130,000 calls in the last couple months. Wow. So yeah. So of those, anybody that says, hi, I'm Ingryd, you're going into our system, because then it's going to go from sort of a cold caller to a follow-up specialist, somebody that's got a little bit more skills on the phone.
Yeah.
And then from the follow-up specialist to our closer, which is he's our final sales boss, right? So that's the one that and I'll kind of digress a little bit. For anybody that's interested in joining our team, this is kind of how we're structuring things. And we're going to have a new structure as of next week. We're going to have cold caller. You work your way to if you sort of prove yourself over here, hell, you're a great cold caller. You show up when you're supposed to. You're hitting the phones. Then you move to follow-up specialist. And same thing, you're sharpening your tools, you're getting better at sales, and then finally you've worked your way up to the closer. Each one of these people get paid more and more as they go up the chain. So that's kind of where we're taking our teams. We're also looking for 20 plus hours a week that people can to dedicate to calling now. One of the problems, Ingryd, is that when we brought in, we had 87 1099. And not only that, we had almost 500 applications.
Wow.
So, and it became just too much because people, like, I would get a call every day from somebody for like an hour, like, oh, how do I open up an LLC in Wyoming? And I'm like, I really want to help teach you. But then if I have 87 people, if I spent 1 hour on the phone with them each week, I wouldn't even sleep. So we had to really kind of like, we're actually recreating the process, and we are going to go live again with bringing more people on the team, but it's going to be a lot more structured with how we do it. We're also working on something that's super top secret, but essentially one of my things that the industry is lacking is taking action, right? There's a lot of trainings on like how to do things, but there's very few things that actually will take action on your behalf. Our company's kind of in the process of creating something to where you pay a monthly subscription and 90% of the action is being taken for you. So, and not like one of those bullshit things where they say, hey, pay us $600, we'll send you like 10 warm leads. It's not that. These are your leads, and they're going to be generated by a caller calling on your behalf solely through your account. So I'll spoil it a little bit. So we've built a couple relationships with some foreign VA calling companies, and we've been testing out a bunch of VAs a bunch of VA companies to see which ones are reliable. And we found a couple that are decently good. And what we're trying to do, or what we are doing, is building relationships with them, batch, and building a training vault. And we're going to combine all these things, and you pay us a monthly subscription, and we're going to sort of manage all this for you. You're going to have a foreign VA that's going to call on your behalf on a set number of hours each week, finding you quote unquote suspects for you to now go and follow up on, right? So instead of you having to sit there and call all day on the dry list or on the skip.
Okay, so let me clarify. So suspects for me, I kid you not, I can't even tell you how many times people are like, oh, hey, look at this one. They're on the list for foreclosures. They maybe have really good equity or something like that. And I'm like, okay, have you had a conversation with them? They're like, oh, no, I just pulled like the best data point in my data list. And it's like, I have access to that data. I literally have the same system. Like the value you can provide is to contact the seller, find out the 4 pillars with the emphasis on motivation, right? What's the 4 pillars? Motivation, price, timeline, and house condition. The condition in my mind comes last. We need to know motivation. We need to know what problems can we solve for the seller. So if you don't get on the phone to get those pieces of points from the seller and or their agents, this is a suspect. It's not a lead.
Right. Absolutely. So, and it's not, just basic skip trace, maybe not even skip trace at that point.
Oh man. I even got like, hey, look at this house on MLS. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, this brings me zero value. Literally go search that right now. It was interesting, people's rationale of what is a lead. So that's why I wanted to, I was also venting a little, but whatever.
We're on the same page. This goes back to having Matt and Mo on my team, because in early May, so I was actually in Phoenix for the Growth Summit. I believe that was early May. I about had a,
I was there. I was trying to get a hold of you, but we never touched base. Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right. So I was ready to have a heart attack. Like that was when we were at 87 callers, and it was what you just described was my everyday times 20.
Oh,
Times
no.
20 for a month.
Okay.
I literally shut down. I shut down. I'm like, I was doing more deals with four. I was doing 10x with 4 people what I was doing with 87 because that was every day of my life.
Wow.
Yep.
So you're making me reconsider. So I will be leading a group in the Elephant Challenge. And I feel like the Elephant Challenge is sort of what you just described, where people don't necessarily know. Uh, Chino just sent a message. He says, "Hey, I sent you an on market last night. Be nice." You had extra information, Chino. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, Elephant Challenge, and it's going to. I have fears that it's going to be like super well attended, and these are going to be big groups. And how am I going to deal with dumb questions? I don't mean to say that, but I have to say it because it can get frustrating. And the only thing I can think of is just like praying and saying, look, at the end of the day, it's going to be make me a better investor because I'll have better patience. And the better I can have patience and coach people through circumstances like that, then it'll just make me a better person, right? So I'm trying to keep, the cup is half full mentality on running a group like that.
Setting expectations from the first day.
Yeah.
Because my thing was I looked at it as a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yes.
To really grow, and I was afraid to be a jerk. I'm not a jerk. I'm an asshole, but I'm not a jerk. Like there's a difference. like I'm very like I'm straightforward. I'm to the point, but I tried to not be that because there were so many newbies and I wanted to be nice and I wanted to like teach them, but I had the same exact problem. Like it was a huge waste of time. Just to be completely transparent, it was a huge waste of time. That being said, I didn't set expectations in the beginning, and I didn't have the right people around me. Now I've got leadership around me that really knows how to handle these systems. So we have it's a funnel, right? Imagine like you're at the bottom of the funnel, right? And you have everything coming to you. If you can set that up to where it slowly gets more narrow, and by the time it gets to Ingryd, I mean, it's kind of like the Pace Morby effect, right? Like how many people are, he's slowly being funneled to him. You can do it on the same on a smaller scale. You just have to set those expectations from the very beginning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, what you just mentioned, the 4 pillars, make sure like from the very beginning, like, hey, look, don't even bring this to me unless you've hit these 4 pillars. It's not worth your time. It's not worth my time. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just letting you know, like, hey, like this is real estate. You have to have X, Y, and Z before you can even do anything else.
Who knew this was going to be a little coaching session for me before I really get started on the Elephant Challenge? So I have a really amazing dude who's going to be running a group with me. His name is Ray Rodriguez. He's successfully running a wholesale business for quite some time now in Vegas. And so he actually brought me that complicated deal that we're going through that we're going to reinstate before we close. Don't tell your mom. I will have to do it that way to make it work. But, like Vegas, you kind of have to sometimes roll the dice, and take a risk. Now, manage that risk. I'm not suggesting reinstate any loan without the proper documentation and instruments. But anyway, so.
Yeah, I got burned on 10 grand about a month or 2 ago. We didn't reinstate the loan, but in a way we did actually. The house was going to auction on Monday. We got under contract on Sunday, the Sunday before. So 6 business days? And it was in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, where that municipality doesn't do a rush. I saw how much potential this deal had. I went and did what I do. I mean, I'm talking calling the trustee, calling the HOA, calling the attorney, calling the president of the HOA. Finally, the president of the HOA said, okay, we'll go ahead and put a stop on it for you, but we want $10,000 in escrow, non-refundable. So to push it back. So get everything done. The seller's so great and nice, and she's so thankful, and she's going to get 30 grand, and it's going to be great. We get it stopped. Ghost. So, and then she refused to sign the cancellation. So we couldn't even attempt to even try to get the escrow back, because in Florida, even though it was non-refundable, we were going to try to negotiate whatever. But if the seller doesn't cancel in Florida, they just hold the escrow with the title until it ends up going to the courts.
So it's like Texas. Texas is the same way.
Yep. So,
Interesting.
yep. So what had happened in that situation is this lady had been buying time for over a year, and she just looked at me as another person to help buy her time. And she was so sweet and nice. And not only that, she had a lawyer come after me. His name's Danny Cohen, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Go give him a call and tell him I said hi, because he sent me a handwritten letter apologizing to me, because he tried to, they put the Attorney General of Florida, they wrote a letter to the Attorney General of Florida trying to get me to do a cease and desist on him. Well, as soon as, and then she ended up ghosting him on everything too, and never paid him. And she ended up losing the house. Here's the craziest part. It ended up going to auction finally, and she didn't get anything. Nothing.
Yeah. She could have gotten 30 grand. Some sellers you really can't get through. By the way, the thing I'm doing with this one is the thing you should have done too, but I will tell you what that is offline.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, and then when I'm done with this story of what we did in this crazy creative coming out of Vegas, I will come back in the podcast. I hope to have Pace and maybe Ray come on the podcast and explain this crazy creative deal that we're going to get done. So again, I'm in a great spot. We have an end buyer. He's already signed the assignment. We're going to send the wire. It's just a matter of getting the reinstatement done at this point. And then again, we have a super secret thing that we did before just to secure sending that money for reinstatement, instead of just paying the $10,000 like Josh did and not have any instruments in place.
Yeah, so we actually have a hard rule where we do an NOI now, notice of interest or affidavit of interest, on every property, because even that would have helped us, because she tried to sell it out from underneath us to someone. They went and listed the house for like and of course it wasn't going to sell, and they went ahead and immediately put it right back up for auction like 35 days later. It was a whole deal.
Yeah.
Whatever that super secret thing is, I can't wait to hear it. But I will say, for everybody else here listening, put an affidavit of interest or notice of interest on every signed contract you have. We actually started meeting sellers at the title company that we work with every time, and actually having them sign the contract and the NOI right there, and getting it notarized in person. So that way there's no going back once they have it signed.
Perfect. That's fantastic.
So
cool. All right. Well, let's see. We're at 4:43. We have 20 minutes left. So you've gone through so many different transactions. I would love to hear, like, what is one of your juiciest like stories to tell, and think about like maybe the biggest problem you've solved for a seller, like something like, for me, part of this business is like the bigger the problem is you're solving for a seller, like the more satisfaction you get on being able to take it all the way to the finish line. Do you have some story like that, or maybe, a crazy story that we all could learn from?
Yeah, so I did a deal one time with, it's always a probate situation, really. That's like the most difficult, in my opinion. The mom had passed away. She had like an ex-husband that was somehow potentially involved. There was a brother that hadn't been around in years. And then the daughter / sister that had been in the property for like the last 15 years, like renting it from her mom. And well, her mom never had a will. So we went from probate attorney to probate attorney, trying to get everything like squared away for the daughter to be able to take it over. Not to mention the bank and the trustee for the bank, they were not trying to play nice at all. Like, they were not taking our calls. Like, they didn't, because we were like final hour, 14 days to auction. So they were just like, oh, we're on vacation. And so this lady didn't have a car. So I had to drive her downtown every day to go and see her attorneys to get the probate situation taken care of. But the problem was we had to go find the ex-husband / husband of her mom, whatever, and her brother that she hadn't talked to in like 7 years, get them to sign it over saying, hey, that we're not actually interested in this. And then with maybe 2 days before the auction, everything went into her name. And then I ended up buying it from her and selling it to some other guy. But it was crazy. I mean, I was a taxi, I was a consultant, I was an investor, she was crying on my shoulder every day. I mean,
You're a therapist.
therapist.
Yeah.
I had my hats were in the back seat. I just kept switching them. Like I put a big Uber sign on my car. Like it was,
Yeah.
it was crazy. And really not so uncommon. If you
Right.
want to be successful in this industry, for me specifically, because we were mostly foreclosures, pre-foreclosure. So
Yeah.
trying to do things like that, it's going to take a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
Same with the lady in Florida. She had 6 days. I mean, I had built a friendship with the president of her HOA to even allow me to do what I did, where I put a stop on the auction there. We just had one that we bought a couple weeks ago, and my financial advisor told me, hey, like we were using a money market fund. He said the cash is liquid. Don't worry about it. Well, only $31,000 was liquid. I told him 2 days before the money needed to be wired that I needed 51,000. He's in the morning. He's like, oh, it's good. It's sent. And they're waiting on me. Like, this is a rush, by the way. We had like 10 days to get this done. Jacob, I'll tell you in a second.
Don't read. I'll read them out loud when you have to answer the question. Yeah.
Jacob was one of our callers for a while. He actually reached out to me. He wants to come back. But so anyways, yeah. So I am like, it is, we have until 1 p.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. Eastern. I apologize, to get this done. And I have the 31,000 sent. I've got, I don't know, 40 some thousand in my bank account. So then I have to, in order to get to 51, I'm calling a bunch of people. I'm in Dayton, Ohio. I'm not even in Milwaukee. The deal's in Milwaukee, title's in Milwaukee. I'm like calling everybody I can in Dayton saying, hey, can I borrow some money? Blah, blah, blah. Like I'll pay you back right away. So finally I get somebody to give me 16,000, which was actually over what I needed. Ran to Chase, deposited the money, sent the wire. The title company said, hey, like Chase's, they do what's called batch wiring. They're like, there's no way this is going to go through. So moral of the story, 13 minutes before the deadline, Chase's wire went through. And I needed $51,000, and I ended up having like over 90,000 wired to this company that day to get the deal done. And yeah, that was a pretty good one because we'll make about probably 50 on that one. So
fantastic.
Anyways, my favorite deal is a sub 2. You guys have heard this. This is the one that I went on Paces for. I listened to it again on Paces podcast, and I didn't explain it as juicy as it was. So it's 16 units, a 6-unit and a 10-unit building. The 6-unit I got for $168,000, subject to plus $7,500 down, including closing costs. The 10-unit I got for it was 156 or 165 plus 7,500. And the 10-unit was 286 plus 7,500. The 6-unit was worth $400,000. Ended up selling it for $311,000, and then the 10-unit was worth about $590,000, and ended up keeping it and actually just sub-2'd it to somebody else. But moral of the story: for about $15,000, I walked into about $400,000 worth of equity.
That's fantastic.
Yep, and not only that, like a $5,000 a month cash flowing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Find me one of those. I want one of those.
Well, we found it on Facebook in like one of those like, like the Milwaukee off-market deals. I called about a 4-plex, and the guy said, hey, I just offloaded it. And take this for advice, everybody. If you're calling about one deal, don't get off the phone without asking, hey, do you have any other deals? Like that should be standard. Like every time you're on the phone with somebody, you just say, hey, hey Ingryd, I know that, that one didn't work out, but do you have any other deals you might be interested in selling? Well,
yeah, for sure.
It was
always end your conversation with, do you have anything else that I can help you with? Any other properties that you might need? I was even teaching my sister was with me today because she's starting to be my executive admin, and I had her. We went to UPS today because we had to go get something notarized, And the guy I was talking to, I was like, oh, I love this UPS store. It's always busy. He's like, oh, I love it too. And I was like, oh, do you own it? He's like, maybe. And I was like, so you own it? And I was like, oh, why don't you sell it to me? What do you want for it? And then and like, that's all the conversation I could have had with him. He was notarizing my paperwork, and I was very much annoying him, but in a funny way. I think he kind of laughed. And then, the other was what you call it? He said, "Oh, I said, do you have any properties you would like to sell?" So even though we're talking about his business, I always bring up properties too, because it's like they're one and the same in my brain. Where it's like they're going to bring you money, it's just in a different way. So Miriam asked, "Where did you get the 15K? I think I sneezed." So yeah, go ahead.
Well, I had the 15K, so I at my absolute maximum, I had like around $600,000 in my bank account, just from real estate. So that money's dwindled a little bit because we've got so much into other deals and sat in the next. But
Are you doing private money lending now, or are
we
you?
are now. Yep, we
Yeah,
are now.
that's great.
Yep. So
That's my like ultimate end game. Mm-hmm.
yep. So we actually just built a relationship with a guy that he just wants 10% back on a 12-month term. So if he gives us 500 grand, he wants 50,000, 550 back at the end of 12 months, which is awesome because we can just roll his 500 over and over and over again and then give him 50.
That's
So
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, there are levels to this. I've never used Gator lending or anything like that. I'm sure it works great. I just never really had to. That
Yeah.
being said, pace is definitely not wrong. If you can use other people's money to make money, that's the name of the game. And
Right.
Rocio, I saw that you said me too. She was talking about she's one of the callers working for the bank.
Yeah.
So,
One of those 87 callers that overwhelmed you.
pretty
So
much.
are people, you said starting next week, you're going to start funneling people back into your business to help them. And then you're just going to be way more scrutinizing of who joins, what those upfront commitments, what does that look like for someone?
Yeah, so we're looking at 20 plus hours a week. We have actually started like a training vault, which is a lot different than what I was doing before, where I was just kind of answering individual questions. This is going to be saying, hey, this is exactly what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And as a part of working for us is if you get, let's say you get a deal, right? We're going to walk you step by step on how from start to finish, right? It's going to go from you to our follow-up specialist to our closer. And we're going to teach you how these things work. And we're also going to show you how we got private money. We're going to show you how we did the title. We're going to show you all of that. So that way you're learning step by step how it goes. Because in my opinion, the hardest part about what we're doing is the cold calling. That's my personal opinion. So if you can be a rock star on the phones, there's nothing that's going to stop you from being successful.
That's cool. Fantastic. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. Like that's definitely, now there's other things you can do tangent, but if you're really good at underwriting, you better be really good at letting people know you're good at underwriting so they come to you with those deals, right? So for me, it's almost like an extension of being on the phone. You're not on the phone with the seller agent, but you have to be on the Zoom, on the podcast, on the social media, wherever, to let people know that's your skill set and how they can leverage you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we have an underwriter, Mohammed, one of my partners. He's our underwriter, and that guy's a wizard. I mean, he is always dead on where it needs to be.
Do we need to get some gals on your team? What's up? I've only heard dude names.
Well, as far as like management went, it was all guys. It really just the people that kind of stepped up to do it, kind of got it. There were more women that were a part of that 87 than men.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
so like Rocio's a woman. So and then yeah, no, it's funny because one of my friends I went to high school with, she helps startups like grow. And she said, first thing we need to do is hire more women for you. So I agree. I do.
Yeah.
So,
I think women can be really killer on the phone. Like it took me no effort to close the seller in Vegas. And I honestly believe it's just women are easier to trust on the phone. Like that's, in my opinion, one of the things that really sets us apart, especially if you're coming in with confidence. So, I don't know. There's the motherly thing about it.
And I think men, they naturally want to talk to women too. So like they're more likely to just not just hang up on the phone like right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. Like,
So
hey, it's like hanging up on your mom. You can't do that.
well,
So,
me and my wife, we play disc golf. My wife's actually really good. She got second in nationals last year, but I would always like write my name on my disc because you lose them a lot, and nobody would ever return them. We started writing her name, and every time they call her because it just
oh,
like because they're curious, like they don't know what it's going to lead to, so they call her and they're like, "Hey, I found your disc." And then
that's so
I
funny.
hop on the phone and I'm like, "Oh, awesome, thank you. Where can I meet you to pick it up?" So, but
Yeah.
you'd be so surprised how much of a difference it was the return rate was on just by putting her name instead of mine.
Yeah. No, that's
So
crazy. So that's a good anecdotal stat. So Zach, just to get an understanding of ARV from the underwriter would be so valuable for sure. ARV very aligned with comping. I will say I came from a real estate background as an agent, and I struggled with ARV for a while because I literally I have my little RPR tool, which is something that we use a lot in real estate. And if it's got 4 or 5 out of stars, it means it's got a lot of data. And if you choose the middle ground, like if you know the condition of the property and that number is aligned with like the average of what's happening, then 99% of the time that number is what you list it for. So there wasn't a lot of thought that had to go into comping. I still comped, but it wasn't significant. But comping to add value is a new skill set. So when I joined Sub 2 and learned that that was something that I was going to have to upskill, I every single day, and I recommend all of you do this, every single day I would pick a property on market or whatever. You can choose your neighbor's house, you can choose whatever house. And you just go and say, okay, what would this house be worth if it had really shitty, like, everything needed replacing? What would it be like? What would I pay cash if if it was an average condition? What would I pay cash if it didn't have much value add? If that's the case, you really should be selling to hedge funds or trying to do sub twos. But anyway, like I challenged myself to take one property every single day and do a comp review. And I got so much better. And all I was doing was one property every day. So don't overwhelm yourself because it can get overwhelming to say, how can I get better at comping? Just try one property every single day. It can be any address, like go on Zillow, press enter, like go to the map of the United States and just figure it out that way. So,
the hardest part for us was the different rates for construction, like costs in
yeah,
different parts of the country. So
yeah,
what I would also recommend is to, let's say your market is Milwaukee, go and find 5 drywall guys and ask them what they charge per square foot. Go and find 5 flooring guys and ask them what they charge per square foot. And do that roofing. I mean everything, bathrooms. Yeah. And they're going to say, "Oh, we don't do that over the phone." And you're going to say, "Listen, I'm an investor. I'm calling around to a bunch of different companies, and I'm trying to get an understanding of what pricing is going to be in my area,
I
just in
would say
case I find a
I'm trying to
property."
get my next hire, right?
Exactly, something like that.
Mhm.
And then what I would do is I would take an average of those per square foot, and I would use that. Like, oh, hey, if it needs new flooring, okay, you find out how much the square foot is, and then use that average of those 5 companies you called, and now you know the price of your flooring. For example, right now we're paying about $5 per square foot for flooring. It's about
Fantastic.
so that to me was the hardest part.
Yeah.
So because you could, I mean, for anyways, I digress. But
So
yeah,
here's
you
what
want
I
to make
did
copies.
in my city. I knew people who were actively flipping. So I just asked them, what is a cosmetic? What is an average? What is a high gut? Right. And so then I got the per square foot average from them, and that's just what I associated. So in my flipping spreadsheet, how many square feet, what bucket is it in? Is it the, easy to hard? And then that helps me break down the underwriting. So I didn't go that deep like you did. I just went to the people who are actually having to pay for these flips and say, what's your per square foot? Because you should be able to answer that if you're a flipper. man, I'm paying on average $45 a square foot right now. That's my cost, and that's kind of how I did it.
That's
But
awesome. We're not always that lucky. Like when I tried to get a mentor, I had this guy that really liked me. When I was getting my sales license, he was the instructor.
yeah,
He called me 99% because he was like, "You're going to get 99% on the test." And I was probably his favorite student, and even he wouldn't recommend any mentors to me because he said in the past he had been burned by recommending people. And I had a hard time. I mean, even to this day, I don't have that many relationships with a lot of the big flippers in Milwaukee. I built up a relationship with a guy, and he cut me out 5,000 on a deal. So yeah, and apologized about it. And in order to make it up to me, he said, "I'll get you a referral on the next one." But moral of the story is like not all of us are going to have people that are just willing to give us those numbers. A lot of flippers, a lot of investors, they feel like they need to hold that stuff to the chest.
yeah.
And
Well, again, if you approach it as I'm a wholesaler, I want to find your next flip. I need to be able to calculate this based on your recommend. I mean, Jamil gives this advice. Pace gives this advice.
yeah, that is genius. That's what we call creative, right?
Right.
We always make it about them.
We are at the end of the podcast. You've been amazing. Thank you, Josh. But I have an announcement to make. So again, this past weekend, my goal at the beginning of the year when I only had, I think, 2,000 or 3,000, I can't remember. I think it's 3,000 followers. I was like, this year I'm going to get to 5,000. And my goal was to get to 5,000 by the end of this year. By the grace of God, I was able to get it this past weekend. So we did a little drawing. I had my sister help me pull these names. And so instead of just giving away one $10 Starbucks card and 1 hour consultation with me, we are going to do 2. So, and I'll message these people if you're not listening or watching or in the chat. So we have, drum roll, please. All right, no, I'm just kidding. Jael Smith, you're one of them. And then the other is Cesar Martinez. You both are in my Instagram chat because you reposted or started following me as a result of a repost. So I will reach out to both of you and get you your $10 card, your $10 Starbucks, and 1 hour consult with me to ask me whatever questions you have. We can have a one-on-one, just like Josh and I were having this, more or less. So Josh, again, how old are you? 10? You're 10 years old today?
I'm 28, yeah.
So you're 28?
I just look old, so.
You're a little bit, okay.
It's all those tenants.
So fantastic. Thank you, Geronimo, for the feedback. We are on our way to go meet these. So I have Chino telling me every single hour, because I told him, I tend to forget about the Latinos call in the sub 2 community group because I have this podcast. And so it's always right at the end.
My wife's Mexican.
Yeah, right. So. I'm Colombian. Yeah. So cool. My husband's Mexican. But anyway, remember, guys, that this podcast by Carolyn and I is free $3.99. So don't forget to like and subscribe and share. If you really like this podcast, consider taking a picture, posting it on your stories, tagging myself, tagging Caroline, and tagging Joshua if you so can. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and we will catch you next time, every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Arizona time, and we'll see you later.
Awesome. Thank you.